So now that I've got my rail all set up and ready to roll, it's nice and smooth. It is still a little bit stiff, but when it gets under pressure, regular pressure, it feels pretty good. But now I'm gonna have to decide how long to make this. So I'm gonna have to cut it because it's too long right now. And I'm gonna decide on the D9 right here, so let's check it out. I do wanna make it long enough that if I decide to do something in the future, I may have to cut a piece off rather than making it too short and wishing I had extra. So I'm gonna make it as long as possible for the way the D9 is now. And if I end up changing that later, then I end up changing it later. I might have to cut it again. So here we go. So on the D9 right here, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get this print head out of the way. A little bit here, we don't really need it for this operation. So there's a couple of Allen screws on the back. And this is original, it's stock. I haven't actually messed with this print head yet, or this nothing, the extruder, nothing. I haven't messed with it one bit. So this is just two probably 3mm screws from the back, and this print head completely comes off, giving us access to the carriage here. So then I'm also going to pull this front plate off of the carrier, off of the actual wheels. Couple more number 3 Allen wrenches, 3mm. Well, the Allen wrench isn't 3mm, but the screw is a 3mm screw. It looks like, pretty sure. Well, there's a hidden one right there in the middle. That's nice, a low profile. Hidden screw. It's a different size Allen, but it still looks like a 3mm screw. And now this carriage is free. I'm going to move this out of the way over here a little bit. And then I'm going to go ahead and remove these wheels. By just pulling the bottom one out, which was pretty simple. So this piece I'm not going to be using again if everything goes well, but I am going to make sure I have it on hand in case everything does not go well. Now that I have free access to the top of this extrusion, so I believe this isn't going to hurt anything. If it goes all the way from this end all the way across to the edge here, it's going to have to be cut to drop down in there. So I'm going to go ahead and mark it where I want to cut it. And I'm going to go cut it, and I'll be right back. So now I'm back from the light show downstairs with my chop saw, and I'm seeing that this is now a decent length, and I'm going to need to put some 3mm cap head screws down in here with some T-bolts on it. So I really don't think we need one in every single hole, but a few of them would be good to keep it as rigid as possible. So let's go do that. So looking at my 20 by 20 extrusion and the screws and the depths and everything, I am seeing that my 3mm by 8mm screw is about the perfect length. It goes almost to the bottom of the T-channel. So I am going to go ahead and put those in there, and I've got these T-bolts that were purchased online, a few of those. So I'm going to go ahead and put some in, maybe every third one I think would be good. So the T-bolts go in like this. And I'm going to take the screw through initially until the screw is even with the bottom of the T-bolt, which I'm feeling for. There we go. So that screw is pretty much even with the bottom of the T-bolt, or the T-nut, I guess, if you want to be particular. So we'll put the rest of these in. So I got all the 3mm screws in, and I got all the T-nuts hooked up underneath there. I'm going to go try to put it in the 20 by 20 extrusion on the machine, and let's see how things work. So over to put it in the 20 by 20 extrusion. So I'm just going to work this over until I get it taken care of. Stay tuned. So I found this carriage adapter dealio online, and I modified it, but I might actually have to modify it again. We'll try it out and see what we can get out of it. It's designed to go on this particular type of carriage or particular type of linear rail, but I don't know if the front is going to interface properly with that, because I don't know if this was designed originally for a stock one, a stock machine, a stock print head, or if we have got to modify it. So we're going to try it out here, see what we can get. Should be fairly rigid. I printed this out of PETG. It's got quite a few shells and pretty solid infill. I think I did it with 5 perimeters and probably 80% infill or more. I'm not going to crank this down too tight because I don't know if this is going to interface with my belt plate right there very well. So the belt plate comes over here, And I am going to have to embed a couple of nuts in there, so I'll take this back out. Put a couple of 3mm nuts in these holes on the back. Make sure it lines up properly. So that nut needs to be on the very outside. And I believe I'm going to put it on here before putting it down on the, there's the second one. Make sure they both have some pretty decent tensions, pretty decent torque on them. Now we can flip that over, put these in our linear rail carriage. Put some tension on them, a little bit of torque, not too much. Remember, we're going into plastic here. Another reason we may have to modify this a little bit is this belt on the back scrubs on the back of the plastic, but just barely. Probably not enough to make a big deal, but in the future I really don't want to have it hurt anything, so, or wear out over time. So maybe I'll look into that in the future. And then we'll put the print head back on with the same screws it was on with before. Now let's make sure we've got a full range of motion all the way to the limit switch. Actually, that is further than it used to go, so we're good there. Put this back, we'll hook up our cable tensioner again, and it's time to start a print. Let's test her out. First thing I'm going to do is re-level the bed, because obviously this is most likely not in the same spot it was in before. Before I level the bed, I am going to make sure that my D9 is up to temperature, which I'm going to do through Octoprint. I'm going to put the bed at 50 degrees and then wait for it to get to temperature so that I can properly level the bed. The reason for this is because the large bed on the 500mm D9 actually warps a little bit when it heats up, so that the center becomes a little bit higher than the outside edges, which means that if you're trying to do a bed level, an auto bed level, it needs to know where the high spots are and the low spots are. So trying to level the bed without the heat is pretty much a disaster. So we'll just wait for that bed to heat right up. Now that we're up to temperature, I'm going to go ahead and level this bed. First thing it's going to do is, of course, find where the bed is with its BL touch, and then it's going to go to the center where I can give it a specific Z offset to use on this bed. I want to make sure the hot end's up to temperature too, in case there's a little piece of filament stuck to the bottom of it. It will screw up my Z offset. Just until I can feel it. And then let the system do its auto bed level magic. So now that it's gone through its whole routine and everything, I'm going to go ahead and have it print a test print, XY rail smoothness, one of the ones I've printed before. So should be pretty interesting. All right, let's take a look at this thing. So here's the new piece that was just printed. There's the x-axis kind of on the back. Here's the old one that was printed before. So not a huge difference, but I am liking the fact that this looks straighter. It looks like it's starting to put each extrusion on top of the one before it and not all kinds of wonky. I'm really liking the way this looks. I'd really like to have linear rails on the y-axis as well, and I'm thinking I might have to purchase some linear rails for the z-axis, because as I was swapping these ones out on the x-axis, I was noticing that there is a little bit of torque allowed from those Z guide wheels. So I'd like that to be a lot more rigid as it goes up in the Z, but for a one-shot deal, this x-axis looks pretty nice. I mean, if we turn it over the other side, of course over here, when it's jumping around this X right here that I had it put on there, that is, of course, as it comes forwards and backwards to do that, that's actually the y-axis. But the rest of it looks pretty clean. I might actually try printing this with a 0.2 layer height and see what that tells me. But as far as this goes, I'm pretty happy with it. Definitely a decent upgrade. Those lines are definitely nice and clean. Very, very straight. Very few anomalies in that little piece right there. So, as far as I can see, it's looking pretty good. The original, or the one before that, if you notice, there are some pretty off-kilter lines through here, and some stuff that's just not matching up. As the head went back and forth, obviously it kind of got knocked out of whack or moved a little bit weird. So that original one, not super fantastic. The new one is looking much, much better, even on the front. The back absolutely looks, I think, pretty beautiful. So there you have it. X-axis linear rail installed on the D9. Well, so far I'm pretty happy I went to the time and expense of installing that linear rail on the X-axis. The results turned out pretty good, and overall, I'm pretty happy about it. One of these days I'll do the Y-axis and probably do the Z-axis as well. Try to just tame the monster. Well, that's it for this episode of Grim 3D. Remember, subscribe if you would like. That's down below. Leave me a comment, just keep it civil. Smash that like button and ring that bell. We'll see you out there.